Lord God moving about the garden in the breezy time of day. This is after they ate from the tree of knowledge. You know, you might think that God was out for an evening stroll. God has human emotions. When God says, now that human has become one of us, knowing good and bad, what if he takes his hand out and eats from the tree of life? So God banishes. In other words, God is upset that humans might be like God. There's an emotion there. And then, of course, God likes the pleasing odor, and God says to God's self. God talks and smells, God reacts and is pleased. The rabbis are puzzled by the wording of the phrase translated as the Lord said to himself. So the Hebrew is el halev or al halev, to the heart or on the heart. So the righteous speak with, that is to or on their hearts, and the villain says in. So, in simple English, here's the heart. If you're a righteous person, you're going to speak with the heart. In other words, the heart is going to be part of your reaction. Versus the non-righteous, the villain, you're speaking in the heart, which means you're closing the heart and being part of anything else. It's by itself. Okay? So the rabbis noted that in referring to the righteous, the Bible does not use the term speak in the heart, but to or on the heart. They cite 4 examples, Hannah and so forth, okay? Now, so what's the first part of Midrash? Let's have a drash. Let's expand the text, let's understand it. This is what is going on in Genesis Rabbah that goes on much further now. What causes people to do wrong? Their heart, emotions, their mind, intellect. I mean, I did not put this together thinking about last Wednesday, but it makes you think about certain things. The wicked are controlled by their heart, but the righteous control their hearts. Do you control yourself, or do you let something else control you? But what is the heart? We assume that it means the emotions. However, it is clear that the Bible saw the heart as the seat of thought. The heart in the Torah, in our rabbinic tradition, really means the intellect. Many thoughts are in a man's mind, lay, literally heart, but it's the Lord's plan that is accomplished, Proverbs. Thus the Bible has one understanding of the heart, while we have another. Where did the rabbis stand? What does our Midrash tell us about the question of what part of the human being controls behavior? The heart or the mind, the emotions or the intellect? Perhaps they meant a bit of both. Lave, heart, is the biblical sense of thought, and lave, heart, is the modern sense of emotion. What is clear is that the rabbis understood the issue less as heart versus mind and more as control versus chaos. The righteous person controls, the wicked is controlled. So, for example, one woman speaks whatever is in her heart. Her emotions control her. Another woman thinks before she speaks, judging the implications of her feelings on others, thus causing less harm along the way. She controls her emotions. Everyone in this room has served on our board of trustees at one time or another. Think about when people get passionate about something, do they speak with their heart or do they speak in their heart? Meaning, in our tradition, speak with their heart. I've heard all what has to be said. I would like to find a way that we can come to a conclusion that works for all of us. Versus, you all are wrong and you're not listening and so forth. That's the difference. Okay? A man does whatever comes to mind, acting in ways that often make friends and family uncomfortable. We all know people like that. His mind runs out of control and controls him. Another man has a clearer thought process, able to think through the possible results of his actions. He doesn't act in the first and so forth. And then teenagers, who don't necessarily have the developmental ability yet to control what's coming out. It's a trial and error. It's a learning process. We all know adults who never quite accomplished that as teenagers. Why is it okay for an elderly person to say whatever they want, but a middle-aged or younger person can't? They have to control it. We clearly have societal norms that allows a certain degree of flexibility based on your age or based on our expectation. Oh, if you're old, you must not be able to control yourself, so we give you a little leeway. And that's not always kosher either. Okay? The rabbis were not proposing that we become controlling personalities. Far from it. They did not expect us to repress our feelings or thoughts. Rather, the goal was that we not allow the processes of thought and emotion to dictate the way we act. Kids have a horrible habit of saying this word, L-I-K-E, as they're talking and trying to process. Like, I'm going to go to the store, like, and going to get, and I'm like, stop. Then we teach you later to replace the like with And I'm going to go to and then of course that gets annoying. But that same concept is all about controlling and thinking before you act. There's one technique that drives people nuts because we don't really know how to use it, and that is called the silent pause. Sometimes we feel we need to have verbiage when there's none need to be. So, we actually enforce that concept in the worship experience. What does silent meditation really mean? Literally, it means the opportunity to offer your own prayers. All the prayers are in the plurality of the community. Great. What does it mean to pray silently? For some people, to pray silently, that's totally against their well-being. Other people, praying silently means I want the background of the organ or the guitar going on. Other people, I don't have an answer. I'm not implying anything. All I'm saying is something to think about, what we call that pausal. We should be in control of our minds and our hearts so that we can be the most pensive, sensitive human being possible. So another drash, another interpretation, the Ba'acher. When we observe people, what do we see? Good or evil? Before we even read anything else. When you look at someone, obviously there's the whole issue of first impression. You only get to make one. You can never redo it, which is not totally true, by the way, because obviously if you have a first impression, then you're disengaged for a long period of time. There's a new first impression. Okay? Unless your mind is set to remembering the negative whatever you had the first time. Think about people you haven't seen for a long time, particularly what I call reunions. High school, college, doesn't matter, and you go, holy crap, they look like shit. You're thinking that. You don't go out, oh my God, right? Or you're thinking, holy cow, they look fantastic. But are we only looking at physicality? Or are we looking at an individual and judging based on what we know about them or heard come out of their mouths? So this Ba'acher is, when you see people, what do you see? I know personally I see good way before I see evil. Tomorrow I'm going to be at Hoboken High School. One of our congregants is an instructor there who invited Reverend Armstrong and myself to come up and have a dialogue about black-Jewish relations.
Amen.
And honor, yes, amen. Apparently we've been offered to do the blessing before the meal from our own faith traditions. I said, mine will be short. But the point is that our purpose is, what we requested, is to share how we have this sacred relationship. And I'll be sharing this story that we did it on our own very organically versus there was an attempt by some individuals to go find a black church to celebrate MLK weekend with. I'm like, what? On paper, it's a very weird statement. Because my predecessor had a relationship, but that relationship dissipated. And I had no relationship with whatever congregation that was. And now, obviously, you know it's expanding. Now, another church, and it looks like we're actually going to have a third church who heard about it and go, can we do it too? Like, we'll work it out. So,
talking about that relationship, it was St. Mark's AME Zion Church.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia.
Is that where it was?
I believe that's right.
It's not important,
No.
but the point is that the choirs sang together.
Right.
And I guess they didn't run the songs, whatever they were going to sing, by the rabbi.
Right. Praise the Lord.
They were all in their beautiful robes.
Robe, yeah.
They were, they started with
The swaying.
the swaying, and they sang "Jesus Will Fix It For You."
Hey, you know what? If you can, I'm happy with it. And I have a leaking pipe over there too. Let's go.
But it was a very strange,
Yeah.
his face was like, and he didn't say anything. I mean, he wasn't, but it was just, we just kind of sat in the
Right.
sanctuary, and it was.
So, even this year, with the Reverend Williams speaking, some people were taken aback by the implication of Jesus' name. And I said, That's his tradition. It didn't really bother me. First of all, I don't take it as, I must believe what he's saying. No, I can be respectful of it, which is essentially what we're talking about here. And if we're going to talk about the evilness in our society, and if we're going to look at our sacred text and say, okay, wait a minute. God just destroyed everything except his one family. And the goofy part, of course, what do? They get off the boat, and the very animals they just saved, barbecue! Like, all right. But
they didn't really say that in detail. They just said there was a burnt offering, or...
Right, but wait a minute. God liked it. It was a pleasing odor.
Could have been something else, wood.
But God liked that pleasing odor.
Don't get me wrong. I believe we have a long tradition of barbecue.
Yeah, that's my point.
But I'm saying, but it just, they didn't expand
God's
in
real
that.
name is Bubba. I don't know. But that's my point. That's my point. Yes. Yes. So yeah, I mean, so when we hear that expression of faith, the question is, when we observe people, what do we see? I am not implying anybody in this room, if hearing a gospel choir invoke Jesus will fix it for you, or save you, or whatever the term was, that you're going to think evil thoughts. You might go, it feels emotionally jarring. I get that. I totally get that. We have from what I'm hearing from other colleagues, we are in for a nice treat tomorrow night. And so, with our guest speaker. I know she's not going to do this, and I would never imply this, so please don't. Oh, wait, I'm on camera, so I'll behave now. Is that I have no expectation that she is going to scream out Allah Akbar in the chanting voice as a call to arms. Because if that would happen during services, I'm not sure I'd be very comfortable with that, unless it's in context and teaching a moment. Whereas in the middle of service, let me stop for a second. I'm like, no.
That's my part tomorrow night.
They only have one thing to say to you, my friend. It was nice knowing you. But that's my point, right? The point is that when you see another human being, what is your first reaction? I will tell you, I've used this when we teach the issue of homelessness or the lower socioeconomics at the Religious Action Center. When you see a person on the street, what do you see? And so here, having observed the experiment called humanity for 10 generations, from Adam and Eve to Noah, God concluded the devising minds of man's mind are evil from his youth. People are by nature wicked. To punish them for being true to their inclinations seemed both unfair and futile, because God created us. So God swore again not to destroy humankind by means of catastrophic flood. We're going to eliminate flooding, but we have every other option still available to us. Right? And the authors of this book added the Anne Frank piece that it's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out, but I keep them because I still believe that people are really good at heart. So who was right? God or Anne? The answer is both. Because we know that in our world today, you have Tzaddikim, the righteous, and you have Rasha. Here we are next week. We remember a certain Rasha by trying to erase his name every time we say it with the Grager, of course, Haman. Conversely, the Hebrew prepositions El and Al are made of just two Hebrew letters. They're separate words, not prefix. They remain independent of the heart. One is to, and one is upon. And homiletically speaking, they're very similar, but they are separate letters. Okay. The rabbis do take note of the small choices of grammatical usage, and therefore make those distinctions. So again, I wanted to show you taking one small piece and how they took it and expanded it more so. Now, this book, what they did, I want to be real clear about it, they took the 3 words that come out in the text and expanded it into a modern language that we can understand. Okay? Let me show you another one. Next page. You don't have trouble for one person that doesn't bring gain for others. So the text, toward the end of Parsha Noah, we have the Tower of Babel story. And God came down to look at the city and the tower, and one person with one language for all, they have begun to act, therefore we're going to change their speech, and God scatters them over the whole because they couldn't understand one another. So the text is that let us then go down. This is one of the things that they changed, for it told me, the king, I will then go down and confound their speech. So what they're talking about here is in about the 3rd century before the Common Era, in the letter of Aristeas, there's a legend of how King Ptolemy II of Philadelphus put 72 Jewish scholars in separate rooms, and they write a text called the Septuagint, meaning the first translation of the text from Hebrew to Greek. Amazingly, their translations were exactly the same. And the truth, it is minus, say, about 24 words, and they're actually noted in a modern transcript of the Septuagint. Even more remarkably, each own chose to alter certain passages. Our Midrash contains one example. Though God speaks in the first person plural, God said, if as one people with one language for all. Prior to that, God came down and let us then go down and confound their speech. Versus, I will then go down. In other words, instead of God speaking as a plural, God speaks as a singular. So the text is, why? The translators render the word the first person singular because the Torah had decided that the royal we translators were concerned that readers might deduce there was more than one God. We have a problem. The Hebrew word for God, Elohim, is a plural word. And the rabbis spent a lot of time and energy trying to expound on that, being justice and mercy. But here, Rabbi Abba Bar Chahana said, from their own lips I will make corpse, nevela. From confound, nevila. Rabbi Abba Bar Chahana then continued with another change of language, this time a wordplay. Instead of the navla referring to the confusion of speech that God inflicted on those who built the tower, Rabbi Abba used the word nevela, the same Hebrew word for a corpse. The result of this pun is a vivid picture of what took place after God gave everyone a different language. It was not merely that the people couldn't communicate. Instead, we see a tragic, comedic scene in which the lack of a common language led to actual violence. The image is they were all working together to build this tower. They're so focused on building this tower that they drop bricks on people below who drop and die. Or someone's hungry, well, I don't really care, I gotta finish this tower. They're so focused. So now they can't give instructions to one another because they don't understand one another. And they get agitated to the point that they fall themselves or are pushing people over. I'll finish it myself. That's the image. So God scattered them from there. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nehemiah, Rabbi Yehuda said, the people from Tyre went to Sidon, and those from Sidon went to Tyre, and Egypt held on his own land. In other words, the punishment was the scattering of humankind. It implied that humankind was centered in one place before building the tower. But after the story of the Great Flood, which took place years before the tower, of course, we read that their 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were the sons of Noah. And from those, the whole world scattered out. How is it possible that humankind was scattered during the time of the Tower of Babel if it had previously been scattered after the flood? So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nehemiah had different explanations. Rabbi Yehuda imagined that after the flood, people moved to their respective countries. People, meaning the 3 sons and their wives. After the tower, population exchanged places. Rabbi Nehemiah explained the people headed first to the mountains fearing another flood. When there was no immediate punishment, they returned to the place in which they had come. So in other words, they're trying to understand the migration of people. They're not at all dealing with the mathematical impossibility of 3 men and their wives repopulating the world over. Okay? But then the rabbi said, not Vayafes, scattered, but Yasef, swept away. The sea swept over them and swept away 30 families. The rabbis returned to the methodology of word plays. By transposing letters, they turned Vayafes, scattered, into Vayasef, swept away. The Midrash speaks about 30 families, or nations, that made up the population of the world. The rabbis held, based upon the genealogical lists in Genesis, the world was comprised of 70 nations. Now, the number 70 will come back again at the end of Genesis when Jacob and his 12 sons go down into Egypt, and they're going to number, grand total with their families, to 72. That number will come back later to be the Sanhedrin, the rabbinic court. Here, though, the rabbis were therefore 79. This number becomes fixed in rabbinic thought. We often read in the 70 language. The rabbis were therefore hard-pressed to explain the addition of 30 families, or nations. So 16 who came from Keturah, 12 from Ishmael, and 2 from Isaac. These 30 families were all descended from Abraham. So while it's appropriate that Abraham be a follower of a multitude of nations, the original number 70 had to be maintained. This can only happen if 30 of the original nations disappeared or were swept away. So that leads to the proverb, you don't have trouble for one person, that doesn't bring gain for others. They're trying to understand the numbers to make it work. Now, this is a story. The texts do not tell us that they disappeared. Otherwise, why are they in the text? They're part of our story. So, the Drash is going to give you interpretation about when someone dies, another person can be saved, especially an organ transplant. So when it says, you don't have trouble for one person that doesn't bring gain for others. Someone's dying, but their organ can help save another life. It's their trouble, but there's gain for another. That's the drash they're giving here. The rabbis are using that respect that 30 families have to disappear so the numbers work. What's wrong with them? I can't tell you. Other than they didn't do something right. But the number they're giving us doesn't work because these are families that we need to stick around, particularly Isaac. So it doesn't work completely. Okay? Another drash is Mark Twain. The war prayer. This is no different where the ambulance prayer or the fire truck prayer that passes you on the way home and you say, I hope it's not my house. The premise is that someone's suffering can be a source of blessing to someone else. It does not imply that we want suffering. It's just implying there's goodness in everything that's out there. So even after the destruction of the flood, there's still the possibility of goodness that surrounds them. So that was just simple Agadic Midrash. And I know it's out there. I mean, I'm not making any difference. So next time we'll go to Halakhic Midrash. We'll look particularly at the Mechilta and some other sources related to that. Any questions? So just stick with Midrash. We're not doing anything else. After that, we will move to Rabbinic codes and look at that material, which is actually, in my opinion, very fascinating, but it's also very different. I have in my note that our next class will be on Thursday, March 8th. Does that sound right to you all?
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, because
It's 2 weeks from now.
February and March.
Yeah, we're the same.
Yeah.
So Thursday, March 8th, and then again March 22nd. And then we'll have Passover break, and we'll figure out after that.
So our reading for next week is...
Just continue with Midrash. We're not going to go any further yet, but I'm going to do Halakhic Midrash next time on the 8th. And on the 22nd, we'll move into, I believe it's Rabbinic codes, medieval codes, something like that.
Medieval Bible commentaries?
Yes. Okay. Anything else?
So, as long as I've read the chapter of Midrash, I'm up to date. Yeah?
You're fine.
Okay.
You're absolutely fine.
I got enough other stuff.
All right. Thank you, everybody.